Okay, hi everyone. I'm Steffi and I'm very happy to be here today and participate in this webinar, Digital Transformation in Finances, Evolution and Trends. The idea for the next hour is going to be to go deeper into what's FinTech, what there is behind this buzzword, how technology has been disrupting the banking industry for the last years, and some of the hot trends that we see for the near future. To do so, we are going to be two speakers here today. Myself, Steffi Wall, currently head of product management at Strands, a fintech company with headquarters here in Barcelona. And my colleague also, Miriam Ballesteros, marketing director also at Strands. Welcome, Miriam, to this webinar.
Hi, everyone. A pleasure to be here with you.
Before we go deeper into the topic, I would like to share some info about our background. I will start with myself. I'm former in industrial engineering. I studied here in Barcelona, and early in my career, I joined the fintech industry. First as a business consultant with GFT, which is a global leader in digital banking services, and also Avaloq Evolution, which is a Swiss company fully focused in financial services, from core banking to many other service layers. In both, I was part of international projects, mainly focused on core banking implementations. Later on, I joined Strands, also a fintech company with headquarters in Barcelona, as I mentioned. And Strands is fully focused on digital banking solutions for money management. Always with roles related to product. Currently, I'm leading the product team. And last but not least, I'm also a fintech lecturer in Barcelona Technology School. And that's why I'm here today talking with you. Miriam, the floor is yours.
So my background is pretty diverse in comparison to Steffi's. I'm a former teacher turned journalist turned marketing expert. So I started out as a business journalist, then I switched to content strategies at weddingspot.co.uk. Then I worked as a communications manager in a clinic here in Barcelona named Descheus. And nowadays I'm the marketing director at Strands, the fintech partner for banks, as well as a marketing lecturer at UPC. So you'll see that I'm very passionate about personal finance and also career development. So that is a personal and professional mission of mine. And from Strands, my role is to raise awareness about all the financial technologies that helps people live better in life and business.
Thanks a lot, Miriam, for this intro. Now let's see how the webinar is going to be organized. So we already did just a first introduction. And now I'm going to do a first overview about what's FinTech, which has been the evolution until here, until today, and some of the upcoming trends. I would like also to highlight that this introduction is going to be just a high level, so very basic, to ensure that everybody that is in this webinar for the second, let's say, part of the webinar, all are in the same page. Then we are going to have a second block. It's called Let's Talk About Hot Topics with Miriam Ballesteros. And the idea in here is going to be to have just a conversation around hot topics that we see relevant in the industry. And last but not least, questions from the audience. I'm sure you already know, but if during the whole webinar you have any question, please write it in the chat, and we will try to answer as much as possible after all the presentation. Okay, let's kick off with what's FinTech and its evolution in the last years. I always start with this slide, although it's very basic. There are many people still that actually doesn't know a lot about FinTech. And actually, FinTech word comes from finance and technology. And it's used to refer to any company that uses technology to improve financial operations, and even companies that use technology to create new business models. In general terms, I would say that FinTech starts with digitalization in financial services and ends up with innovation. FinTech can cover many areas, from personal finance, financial wellness, trading, blockchain, payments, lending. It could be the whole hour talking about just different categories. So it's very big, but actually all relays under the same concept. Technology has allowed us to improve and create new services in financial industry, and even allow new players to compete with all players, which are banks, or also called incumbents or incumbents. And think about 50 years ago, all interactions with our bank were done in person. Think on your parents or your grandparents. We went to our bank managers to discuss anything, accounts, credits, mortgages, but this is not happening anymore. Or at least this is not happening at the same level. Now all interactions are done digitally. Bank needs to know us, know what do we need, financially speaking, of course, without seeing us in person. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we see in the fintech industry nowadays, but we will cover it later. Let's have a look from a high level perspective, some of the main milestones in this industry. Around 53 years ago, the first ATM was opened by Barclays. And what is relevant is before that, think how the person was dealing with withdraw money. So before that, everyone had to go to the branch to talk with the bank manager, to open the account, to withdraw cash, whatever. Around 25 years ago, the first online checking account was opened by Wells Fargo. This is very, very relevant because this was the first time that two of the most common banking operations could be done outside branches. Those two, let's say, things that are the most common in the online banking are checking the balance and transferring money. And from that point onwards, both could be done digitally. Around 22 years ago, PayPal was founded. I think everyone knows about PayPal. So from that point, money movements started to be processed through different entities and not only from banks. Around 11 years ago, of course, Bitcoin was released. A new entity outside regulation was created to exchange digital assets at the end, but without intermediate entities. Around 6 years ago, Apple Pay was launched. This was also a very big milestone because big companies outside the fintech industry started entering into financial services. This is just an example, there are many. But also Apple, due to all the history that has the company, it's also a big step. Then around 2 years ago, PSD2 came into force. The level of innovation was so high that regulators at the end came in, setting the stage and allowing small players to compete under the same conditions. For the ones that doesn't know a lot about this, PSD2 means Payment Service Directive, and actually it's just a regulation that defines a legal and technology framework for any company to become both one account service provider and or payment service provider. This means at the end, provide account aggregation services and or initiate payment services. This is actually the lever for open banking, and many similar regulations are being defined worldwide. And around 1 year ago, one neobank called Revolut, also everyone knows about it, started offering trading. First, it was just a prepaid card to keep, request, and send money, and they ended up entering into a very complex offering. Another example of this could be Robinhood. It's a very famous application in UK that has done is also offering trading services. From 2019 up to now, there is a clear trend of collaboration between fintechs and banks. And although are not in the slide, some of the examples of these are, for instance, BBVA and FinTonic, which join forces for a marketplace for lending. And another example of that is a MasterCard and Token joining forces to provide an open banking hub. And there are many other examples. So what's behind all these innovations in the financial sector? How actually is the context that has driven the industry towards this huge evolution? I would summarize this in 4 pillars. The first one is technology. Since many years, technology goes always one step beyond real innovations. You know that actually cars are ready to drive without humans, but humans are not ready to accept that machines can be smarter than ourselves. You know also that artificial intelligence is there since years ago, but until regulations and data sharing was not acceptable from a security perspective, customers were not ready to accept it either. And these are just some of the examples. The second pillar, I would say, is customer expectations. Customer expectations are every day higher. We can find a taxi and even match with our next date in less than a second. And I guess it's normal that we expect the same level of experience in financial services. Customer expectations are and has been always driving innovation. My third pillar would be regulation. Regulation has allowed small players to compete with big players under the same conditions. And as you may know, the financial market was very closed, and creating a common framework for all, it has been key for disruption. And last but not least, of course, the money. Without money, we cannot do anything. And actually in this industry, in the FinTech, founding in 2019 was around $137 billion, which is a lot. Let's see now some examples that this context has bring us to us. Just also for you to know, at the end of 2019, we were around 57 FinTech unicorns. For the ones that are not aware of what means unicorns, means that those companies have a value higher than $2 billion. So quite big. Some of the examples that I would like to highlight are, for instance, Monzo is a digital bank from UK. They are already around 3.5 million customers, and they are very focused on providing with a high level user experience and also in money management and budgeting capabilities. Their offering is focused in both in retail and SME banking, and they also sometimes define themselves as a digital traditional bank without fees. Another example that I would like to highlight is number 26, digital bank from Germany, around 5 million customers, I guess now. And they are offering checking account and also budgeting capabilities. For now, they are just focused on retail banking. Another example could be Revolut. I already mentioned that before. Revolut is a digital bank from UK. They are around 7 million customers now. And they go beyond traditional banking with trading and additional services based on subscription models. Another example, completely different than neobanks, are, for instance, TransferWise. TransferWise, also known by almost everyone, very famous to transfer money cheaper and faster worldwide. Very used when you are working or living outside your country. And they are currently around 4 million customers. Another example, also I think it makes sense to highlight, is SumUp, is a mobile payments also from UK. And they are offering a card reader to allow merchants to accept payments, very similar to Square for the ones that you know. And yeah. Oak North, also very important, is a lending platform completely different than the others that I mentioned. They're providing a lending platform for SMEs in UK. And this is a very, I wouldn't say innovative, but it's very useful for SMEs because their, let's say, finances are quite difficult to manage, and liquidity is always a problem for them. So I think it's a win-win for SMEs and also for the company. Okay. Now let's talk a bit about FinTech trends. You have seen all the history. You have seen the context that has driven us to here. Now I would like to talk a bit about what is coming. For that, I always use a video. It's quite old, but still relevant. If you have a look.
Hello, Bank Manager. Hi, Maria. What can I do for you? Summary of accounts, please. Festival savings. Transfer £200 from festival savings to current account. Reference ticket purchase. Hey Maria, we have a partnership with X Tickets. What tickets do you want to purchase? 2 tickets for Berlin Festival? Sure. These tickets come on sale in a few seconds. Do you want us to purchase them automatically as soon as they're available? Yes. Congratulations. Please authenticate on your purchase. We can provide help and advice for your upcoming trip. Would you like to know more? What can you offer? We recommend upgrading to a multi-currency account to save on fees. And booking a flight soon, as availability is rapidly reducing since festival tickets went on sale. Let's do it. So, we are going to Berlin.
Okay. If you have seen the video, then here there are many things that are relevant actually and very new for most of the people, but I would highlight first, you see a new channel. This girl is talking with the bank manager directly through voice, digitally, of course. Also, another thing is they are interacting in a different context. So the context is I want to go to another country to, I don't know, to go to a concert. It's not the reason behind is not just a financial reason. And this makes everything much more interesting. Through during this context, let's say the bank also has the opportunity to offer even other services that are not belonging to financial industries, or even some of them are also within in the financial industry. I mean, for instance, the account for reducing FX fees. This is a good example. And actually makes more sense offer it in this context because it's when this person needs actually that. And then this means that most likely this person is going to also buy this financial product. So everything, let's say, makes more sense when it's in a context the user needs. And what about, so we have reached the point where we see where is the financial sector going, let's say, the context that has driven everything through this way. And now, which are the next challenges or next opportunities that we see or that we foresee for the upcoming future? I would like to summarize this in 3 pillars again. The first one is understanding or putting data into value. From my perspective, understanding data is crucial to help tap into its value and allow to engage on a different level with customers. Incumbents or banks and fintechs have customers' data, but extract the value of the raw data is the key differentiation. As you have seen in the video, the bank manager in this case had enough context to know that this person might need a financial product related to FX. This is the value. This is actually a good example on how we can put data into value. The second one is open banking strategy. Every day we see new segments. Every day we talk more about open banking, and for sure, this buzzword is not understandable for everyone, but actually it comes with new business and innovation. Incumbents are not anymore our data owners, and cool companies can provide new services using customers' data and adding financial services on top. For sure, it will come up with innovation that we cannot even imagine today. And the last one that I would like to highlight is the underserved segments. There are many segments that are underserved. One of them was SMEs, were the target some years ago, but unbanked people from Africa or even South America are others. Identify customers' needs is key to discover new segments. And just putting a couple, I have just 3 examples very quickly, more direct to the reality actually. The first one I would like to mention is the voice as a new channel. According to the experts, things like Google Assistant, Amazon Alexa, Siri are changing the way how people interact with technology. And voice is able to engage emotionally with customers. And that's the goal of any product or services at the end. Another example is marketplaces as a common offering. Open banking trends come with many new opportunities, as you know, and one of them is to cross-sell different products, even the ones that were not part of our own business. Now the goal is to know what your customers need, and when they are using your service, evaluate if it makes sense or not, include that as part of your offering. Technology allows companies to connect to other companies through open banking APIs and use data and services from others. So the value is not the product anymore. The value is when you offer it and in which context. And the last trend that also everyone is talking about it is the user experience. The interface used by customers to engage with your product or services. That's actually the interface. And in the past, this was not an additional, let's say, layer for any product. But currently, the level of other industries is so high that financial industry cannot keep past or existing interfaces. As I said before, you can just request a taxi in a couple of minutes and it's next to me. I can match with my date in a second. I can split my bills and request money to my partner in a second. Fintechs are better on this. They understood the importance of the context first, that banks. And examples of that are Atom Bank, Revolut, number 26. But banks are also working on that direction. And it's clear that it's a clear trend for the present and for the upcoming years. Okay, so that was all from the, let's say, the FinTech overview. Now let's continue talking a bit with our guest, Miriam, about hot topics in the industry. I'm gonna stop sharing so you can see our faces. Okay. So Miriam, with everything that I just explained, any other trend that you see now as relevant for the upcoming years?
Well, to be honest, you've covered a lot. So it's going to be a challenge to add some more trends in your presentation. But as a recap, I would add 3 main points. One trend that is very clear right now, it's financial education, also cashless, and then personalization. So I'm going to break down a little bit into the 3 of them so that you can also have an overview if you're not in the industry. Number 1, financial education. What I see from a marketing standpoint, of course, I'm biased, but what I see is that players who are focusing on financial education and wellness are having a great impact on customers. And the main reason why, well, we've seen that there are no lots of financial literacy historically. So players who are trying to nurture and educate their users are paying really off. So the more knowledge about personal finance or business finance a particular person has, the more great choices he or she is going to make regarding saving, investing, budgeting, you name it, right? So for example, here I would highlight a player in Spain, which is pretty new, but pretty hard, so to speak, and it's Valio. Probably some of you would know about it, probably some of you won't. If not, check it out because I think they are really disrupting the industry and it's worth checking them out. So personal finance, education, and financial well-being, that would be a trend that I would highlight. Second one, and very important given the context we're living in, is cashless. So we are moving towards a cashless society. And we've seen in the coronavirus pandemic situation, how many of us have been doing more online shopping than we do that as usual, right? I have been doing a little bit of more online shopping, and tons of users have been using and doing some payments online. So at the end, cashless is a trend that is here to stay, and financial institutions are beginning to applying some of artificial intelligence, especially to tackle fraud. This is a trend. The more digital services that we use, the more digital types of crime we are seeing in the industry, right? So this is something that also banks and government are working at the moment to detect some patterns tied to fraud so that they can reduce crime fighting costs. And the last trend that you've mentioned it with the example in your video, Steffi, but I think it's a very good one, is personalization. At the end, if you establish a meaningful relationship with your customer, you have more chances to be a loyal customer in the long run, right? So financial institutions should really ask themselves, are we really offering personalized service to each of our user targets, or is it just marketing? So marketing and products have to go hand in hand. So it's a great example that both my colleague Steffi and I from marketing and product are doing this joint webinar together, because you have to have a great compelling product, but you have to communicate it properly. So if you have these two business units very tight, you have the recipe for success. So I would add these three trends at the moment. Maybe we come up with another one in the following questions.
Sure. I would like also to comment regarding the financial wellness that you mentioned. I also see this actually as a trend now from, I would say 1 or 2 years ago, but now I think it's going higher. And here in Spain, we have different examples like the one that you mentioned, Valio, which is super cool. I also recommend to have a look. We have also Fansfi, which is like a new bank from Spain. It's not very, not everybody knows about it, but I check out it's worth as well. They are offering trading and other things. And also, for instance, there is another one which is called Finect. If I'm not wrong, they are very focused.
Finect, yeah.
Finect. Yeah, they are very focused on, let's say, offering like advisory services for anyone that can be interested in, because any of us now has some money saved, and it's actually, it makes sense to have some services that allow you to to invest on or understand how you can actually take more of your money.
You are right.
Okay, let's go for the second one. Do you see fintech as a real competitors for a bank? I know you have seen this question many times, but do you see so fintech and banks really competitors, or just as a strategic alliance?
Well, it's a reality that we can find two types of scenarios here. So on one hand, we have these new fintech players. So if you think of fintech, as Steffi was mentioning before, fintech is financial technology. So some new companies are more tech than fin in this fintech tango. So for example, we have Google, Amazon, Facebook, these huge companies also named under the acronym GAFAs. So they are very well positioned when it comes to technology, not so much in finances, but they have this very tech powerful engine to compete with banks. Then we have other type of fintechs that want to collaborate with banks and position themselves as a partner for banks and basically act as the bank or financial institution innovation engine. So sometimes banks do not have the same ability of being agile when it comes to innovation because they are a very corporate and big established institution, while fintechs are very agile and flexible. So for example, Strands, where we work, it's a fintech for banks. So we help banks innovate through white label solutions for business and personal finance. So we have these two scenarios. I think no matter what's the scenario that maybe you're thinking in a company is right now, the great thing is collaboration. It always pays off. So sometimes even B2C companies end up needing some collaboration from other service providers or fintech players. So we are in a very interesting context, and I think we'll see lots of transformations of companies in the near future.
Yeah, fully agree. Actually, I was thinking now about this competition, right? Honestly, I think it doesn't matter if it's competition or not. What actually matters is if just deciding one service that you want to provide and see if this service that you want to offer is better with a bank or without a bank.
Definitely.
For users now, it doesn't matter from where it comes from. If you are more or less techie and you are in the industry, you don't have, because there are people that maybe is not so, doesn't trust a lot in fintechs, no? But if you are in the industry and you know how it works, I trust a lot in them. And the only thing that matters from my perspective is the service. I would say that.
That's right. This is actually something that, if I'm not mistaken, Bill Gates said, and the quote is, banking is necessary, banks are not. So at the end of the day, if you're providing a good service, you have to have a robust structure and of course have licenses if you are providing a particular service that needs regulation, but definitely agree. We're on the same page, Steffi, on this one.
Okay, let's talk a bit about the future. How do you see the future in the financial sector? Any strategy for incumbent banks or fintechs?
Okay, great question. Very broad and interesting. I think the future is looking amazing. I think being in the fintech space right now or digital banking is the place and the time to be at the moment. So for those of you who are not in the industry, we call incumbents banks, right? So it's the same thing, financial institutions. So I see that historically we have been having like a monopoly, right? So we had a limited amount of banks to choose as a client that we wanted to work with. And right now we have a very complex ecosystem with all the new fintech players. So my take on that is that both banks and fintechs will differentiate themselves as long as they provide real value to the user. And this is, again, moving towards a customer-centric organization and customer-centric products. Also, what I see, for example, fintechs really help banks innovate, being in a partnership or as a standalone. But for example, if you think of TransferWise, they were having this huge share of the market pie, but banks didn't want to miss that share. So for example, Santander now implemented their service for PagoFX for all things currencies, which is a great innovation powered, but all this pressure and innovations that the competitors were doing. So I think it's a very, very interesting moment. Also, I think another factor that will be a key differentiator is going to be how do you keep users on board in the long run? Because from a marketing standpoint, it's very hard to acquire users. There's lots of competitors and lots of channels and trends and target markets, etc. But once you have the client on board, how are you going to keep them engaged in the long run, and in a genuine way, right? If you're offering a compelling solution, probably the word of mouth of your clients is something that will be very important in your strategy. And this is something that Revolut, Steffi, that you were mentioning before, did really good. They had a great solution, very simple, easy to use. They had a wonderful UX, so user experience, and they had a very little spending on marketing. So to me, it was very surprising. So what they did is to communicate the product, and then basically with the word of mouth methodology that comes very naturally if the solution is good, they acquired tons of new users, which I think is great.
I think actually there are many examples now that are using this technique to acquire users. Like, okay, if you communicate to one of your friends and they also log in the application, then you have some money or things like this.
And this is a kind of paid member get member strategy. Yeah. So of course you have a referral fee if you recommend somebody and then this somebody signs up. Mm-hmm. But if your product is that good that you do it naturally just because you love a friend and you want to recommend something that will help them live better financially, that is amazing.
Yeah, it's quite organic actually, and that's
exactly
what is looking for. Also, I would like to add just a few words about also the structure of the ecosystem, right? If we talk about let's say what is the future of fintech on financial sector, open banking and different regulations has changed a lot the ecosystem. If you have a look in, as I was mentioning at the beginning, 50 years ago, how the financial sector was, like all the interactions were through branches. Even if you had to withdraw money 50 years ago. Now everything is digitally. And not only that, so not only digitally. So now there are many services that offering within the financial apps, let's say, services that are not even financial products. For instance, I don't know, BNext, I think it was, I think it was this week, I just read an article where they were talking about onboard a new partnership where if you are using their BNext card, then you get some money back when you are buying Amazon or another provider. I don't remember exactly.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, but that's exactly just an example of how open banking and open banking APIs can be used to offer other services. when they are actually needed. And another example that comes to my mind is, for instance, in Revolut, when you are in the airport, you can just enter in a lounge if you want. You need to pay, right? But this is a service that is within the financial application. That's actually amazing. And I would say that it went from a monopoly. I mean, banks were offering everything, and now they just split all the pillars or all the silos, and let's say technology companies, which has now all the energy and all the are trying to taking just these silos that are relevant or are worthy in terms of money, and they are creating new solutions, new companies, new products that are even better than the ones that we were offering. So
that's a really great example, because you are talking about a financial service company offering non-financial service or products, which I think that it's as real as life itself, right? We cannot separate our finances from our daily life, for example. So if you want to budget for a travel, let's say, and you're using Revolut, if they can offer you this experience that adds value, such as going to a VIP lounge to relax a little bit and chill yourself before jumping into the plane, I think it's a great example. So this is what I was referring to when we talk about collaborations within other fintech players, that maybe they are not partnering with banks, but you have to be open to find new ways of integrating services that might be useful for the end user, as Steffi, as me, and as all the people who are watching us.
Yeah. And talking about this, because that's it just came to my mind, a very interesting question, I think.
Okay.
There are many companies, neobanks, fintech companies, let's say, are offering financial services, but not all have actually license like banks, right? Why actually do you think that these new actors are not becoming full licensed banks?
Well, from a business standpoint, I think it's a way to make things easier and starting slow and then moving slowly but surely. So, for example, what I see is that if you're in the lending space, maybe you don't need the same regulation as a bank would need, and you are targeting a very profitable business unit, and maybe you're not interested into scaling and complicating things to have more licenses and provide other banking services. So I think neobanks are not offering a wide range of solutions as banks are, of course, because they are finding revenue streams with a very narrowed units, which I think is a very smart way of doing business. But of course, if they want to escalate and then they get some feedback from real customers and that they are asking for more services, this is something that they will have to consider for sure.
Yeah, I fully agree. Actually, I also think that at the end, it depends on the service that you want to provide. Is what I mentioned before, right? Banks are offering many services, and not all are related to, let's say, the license that they need. So having an account, of course, you need certain regulation. But just imagine, just to initiate payments or having a prepaid card, things like this that are super, super useful, even more than actually a checking account. For this, you don't need a license. For sure, you need to comply in other regulations and other stuff. But I think there are many companies that are trying just to be in the line and avoid all these regulations.
Yeah.
To keep being profitable without all this complexity, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we find some neobanks in this gray area, right? That yeah.
Okay.
What else?
Let's talk.
What else do you have for me?
Let's talk a bit about open banking now.
Okay.
Open banking is a global trend. There are many regulations worldwide supporting this new paradigm, and it's a very weird question. Let's see your answer. What do you think it comes first, regulation or innovation?
Regulation or innovation? Well, this is like the chicken and egg loop, right? I would say the first thing that comes is demand. So if you're actively providing some services and you're actively listening to your target market, you probably get some interesting feedback and some demands of your current database of users or prospects or wherever. And then maybe then if you have this powerful base that of users requiring more services, then you will probably apply for a regulation. So, but it can be the other way around. The trend is that innovation, of course, is something that has to exist before being regulated. And of course, innovation accelerates regulation, right? I don't know if you agree or have other take on that.
I think it's a circle, as you said. So, but then I think about other countries, because, for instance, let's talk a bit about the US. In US, they don't have open banking regulations. They are against this because they don't, let's say, want to establish a market or a framework where everyone needs to complete. And this is also, this is a way of innovating. But then all the banks and all the fintechs in that area actually are just trying to, to join forces to actually produce services that add value to the user. In Europe, we have a completely different strategy. It was like, okay, there is technology, there are customer expectations are super high, and actually small players that were trying to compete with banks, they couldn't, because at the end, the power of the brand and many other things, and also technology and infrastructure. There are many other reasons that, let's say, didn't let them continue with this path. And then it's where regulation came in. So then with open banking, as you know, we can connect, we can use open banking APIs to, plug and play technology and actually have or use our data in many different ways. And actually, I think that now establishing this framework, it's easier for innovation now, but I don't know what came first. It depends.
Definitely. It's going to be very interesting. The people who are listening to us, if you are not from Spain or you're not currently living in Spain or even Europe, if there's some of you that at the end would like to share some experience in the comments, that would be very interesting to hear your views as well.
Okay, what do you think? Let's see what the questions from the audience. Okay, okay, I have one. Roger Romans is asking about apps like Verse. This is considered a fintech. What is the difference with Bizum, for instance? Well, actually, Verse, of course, is a fintech. They are very similar to at the beginning that very similar to Revolut in the sense of they were offering mainly splitting payments and sending money with your friends, things like this. Bizum is another story. I mean, Bizum is just a service that has been actually built for banks, but it's a fintech as well. They were super smart. I always think that. And now you have, you can do a Bizum from any online banking. I don't know. What do you think about this, Miriam?
We're totally on the same page. I was reading another question that were from Roger. He was asking us what was the company that we were talking about at the beginning when we were talking about financial education and wellness, and I was mentioning investing. It's Ballio, so it's BALIO. And what else? Well, we have many questions. Maybe we can keep them here and then move to the questions we had, Steffi, and then we'll jump into these ones at the end.
Yeah,
right. We open the Pandora box now here.
Yeah, let me see just a second if I see something interesting.
Okay. Well, I agree. Trinidad says that the banking industry is over-regulated. That's for sure, especially here in Spain. And one of the reasons why they are slower reacting to the market needs, definitely. She's asking us if, are you expecting a new regulation affecting to FinTech? If so, are you preparing the impact on their business model? Well, for example, I can speak from strands. We personally, as we partner for banks, we are a different kind of FinTech. So we do not apply for any kind of regulations because we partner with banks that already need to have or apply for the certain regulations. So this is a different business model. But Steffi, I don't know if you know if there are FinTechs at the moment, other FinTechs applying for regulations here.
I'm not always up to date with the regulation because it's super complex.
It's very complicated.
We're up to date because there are many changes. But I would like to say on that regulation, actually, I'm sure new regulations are gonna come, but the important thing I think is for companies, it's to be up to date and being able to react as soon as the regulation, let's say, is more or less stable. It's not about anticipate, because you never know how it's gonna be, but it's just about react as soon as it's more or less clear. Otherwise, it's very difficult to compete.
Right.
Okay, good question. I'm still trying to understand FinTech implementation. How implement FinTech with your industrial company, and what do you think with corporate company who's still dealing with paper? How to propose the benefit?
That's not just FinTech, that is companies dealing with paper. It's like the first step of digital transformation. So it's for a bigger conversation even.
Yeah, I think also important to mention, I mean, I said at the beginning, like digital transformation or FinTech has, for me, from my perspective, has two areas. The first one, FinTech is trying to digitalize all the processes that before were done on paper.
Manually?
Yeah. And the other part is, okay, we have a new area, we have a new paradigm, new situation. With this technology, we can also create new revenue streams, new business models. And this is also FinTech, of course. I think it's worth it to understand both pillars. And answering the question how we implement FinTech in our company, in our case, very quickly, in Strands, we are, as Miriam mentioned before, we are a B2B company. So all the software that we do is for banks and is focused in money management. So we are trying, let's say, to help in the retail segment, people like us to understand better where they spend the money, aggregate accounts, save some money if possible. In other areas like the SME segment, we are more focused in invoicing, taxes,
cash flow management.
Yeah, but things like this. But independently of the solution, actually the implementation can be in different ways. The more traditional one, which is, let's say, we call it on-premise. So all our software goes to the bank premises, and then all the, let's say, integrations are done, and all the solutions are offered through the online banking. And the second option, which is now every day more and more a reality, is have it on cloud. So all our software is just installed on cloud, or is having it on cloud, and then the interaction is the same. At the end, all the solutions are through online banking, and well, that's the way how we actually sell our software. Okay. I'm trying to find one that is. Go ahead. Maybe this something.
No. I was about to say that you were. Did you have another one?
I just saw one for, I think it's Christian. I think we know Christian, regarding cashless society. Mm-hmm. Do you see any chance that we will see a European credit and card schema? Wouldn't be that the next big thing for FinTech? That's a very good question.
I think it's the next thing for FinTech and banks. And I think that all the artificial intelligence and machine learning technology and all the things behind this password as well are going to play a huge role in this. The ability to, as I was mentioning before, the ability to detect some patterns and be able to help users fight against all types of crime, like digital identity and other nasty crimes that happen online, is going to be a thing to tackle for sure. And if banks are not innovating enough in this sense, FinTech will, and then they will have two choices, right? Either collaborate with them or apply the innovation within the bank. So I think it's something that is happening at the moment, and a huge opportunity to dive into for tons of players.
And this is also the cashless society. You also mentioned before as a global trend, right?
Yep. Yeah, and not just European. I think it's a worldwide trend.
Actually, I also would say that maybe even less in Europe, actually, mm-hmm. more in South America or Africa. Mm-hmm. There are many people that doesn't have even bank account.
Exactly.
And there are, especially in South America, there are many FinTechs in Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, that they are trying to create services, at least for first to onboard people in the financial industry, let's say. So in that area, there is there is many things to do. And also I think that is very, very interesting because at the end, actually in this concrete schema or in this concrete example, you are really offering something to help people, which is actually the final goal of everything that you do. I think maybe you can answer this one, Miriam. Let's see how we can avoid the personal data ethical issue when we are developing fintech.
Whoa, well, ethics open another huge box that I would love to discuss it for hours. If you want to tackle ethical issues, I think a very important thing is, number one, to have a very diverse team. And this also happens in artificial intelligence team, right? You develop your solutions, having a user that is very similar to you in mind when you create all the products. So the more diverse a team is, the more chances you have to develop a diverse solution that matches more needs and reduces bias, so to speak. And that comes in all the levels in the company, right? So the more diverse you have the management layer, and then the development layer, and then the customer-centric lab lawyer. So I think diversity will have a great impact to have this ethical issue solved. Is of course not the only one, but it's a great place to start. Good. You're laughing, Steffi. Maybe you want to add something.
Running here. You're distracting me. Okay, let's go for the next one. Anonymous attendee was asking about security, actually. With digital banking becoming more and more popular, do you think this makes them a target for cybersecurity attacks? How fintech companies are able to convince potential users of their security?
This is a very good question. And actually, this is one of the strengths that banks have, right? So banks have been in the run for a long time, and they have all this data and the robust structure, even more structured than some standalone fintechs. So how are fintech companies are gonna be able to convince potential users? Well, you have to prove yourself right in all sentences, in all sense. So if you have a compelling product and you have a database of happy customers and you're able to show your security and making sure that these users are going to trust you, this is something that you will have to communicate, but something that your product will have to do. So again, it's about having your solution and then having this communication strategy in line to do that.
Experience is also important, right? I mean, security, I mean, you never know how it's going to be security. For sure, you need to comply with certain things, but at the end, the time is what actually gives you the right. So I would say the time is also important on that. Let's go for another one. Okay. Hugo Davis is asking about blockchain in the fintech industry. The question is, do you see a place for blockchain in the fintech industry in the years to come? Shall I answer that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Blockchain is also very, very, super big topic. And I love it. I mean, in our company, we are not working with blockchain, unfortunately. I hope one day.
Not yet.
Yeah. But I for sure see blockchain as a global trend. I mean, it's already proved. There are many companies, like for instance, the one that mentioned Miriam before for payments, PagoFX or
PagoFX.
PagoFX, thank you. And they are, all the technology behind is based on blockchain. So blockchain has many different applications. One is improving like the payments that are done between different countries and different currencies. I just forgot the name of this kind of payments, but this is one of the biggest, let's say, applications in the fintech industry. And another one, there are many, but another one that I see as relevant are the smart contracts. This is more maybe for paper, but smart contracts are going to be for sure used in many different areas, even in in politics when we vote for things like this. At the end, you can have somehow a contract virtually that you don't need to care about how and when every, let's say, statement of the contract is going to be applied, because everything is technologized. Well, I mean, it's under technology, so humans doesn't have intervention in that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have anything to add.
You're more into the product innovations, and I think you answered that perfectly.
There are many things that we could say about actually blockchain. What growth prospects? Let me see another one. I would say, let's take the last one actually, Miriam, because only 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, there are many. If we're not able to answer all of them, I think the organizers from the Barcelona Technology School will provide you with our contact info if you want to reach out and continue the conversation. And if I'm not mistaken, they will also share the presentation with you. So do not worry if we're not able to go through all of them.
Yeah, and anyway, you have, I think they also shared our contacts, I think.
Oh, okay.
In
right then.
If anything, if there is any question that we didn't have time to answer, I mean, you can go also through LinkedIn. Okay, let's find the last one. Okay, last one from Lenin, Vladimir. What growth prospects can be observed when using open finance along cryptocurrency?
Very expert question.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understood actually.
Cryptocurrencies and open finance along with it, it's a bit way beyond my expertise at the moment. At the moment, I'm not sure, Steffi, if you're going to be able to answer that.
Well, I would say, I mean, cryptocurrency under blockchain, of course, is a very trendy topic now. Well, it was actually even more trendy some years ago when everyone had blockchains with Bitcoin, sorry, with the value in here. Now it's less famous. But in terms of prospects, I would assume that you are asking about, different companies that are just now launching new things. There are many. I cannot even give you examples because there are many. There is one, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce properly now, but it's called Like from Switzerland.
I don't know this one.
Well, the most basic example, for instance, is Revolut. At the end, they are also trading even digital assets. And also, I would like to mention on that topic that apart from the digital assets that we are able to trade with different applications like Revolut and others, also banks are having a big trend on that direction. In Switzerland, especially, there are some banks that are offering digital assets within their own portfolios. So now it's like, okay, you can trade Bitcoin, for instance, with Revolut, but you can also go to a bank and they are offering digital assets. They are under their, let's say, advice. And I think this is a very smart movement. And well, I think it's going to be a global trend for sure, because it's a way for banks to also entering into this area, into this space.
Cool.
Okay.
Do you want to go for another one?
I think we are also almost on time, so I think we can maybe just
wrap it up here.
Wrap it up and answering the questions outside of the webinar. So first, thank you, Miriam, for participating in the webinar. It has been a pleasure.
It's my pleasure to be a guest here. Oh, and
go ahead.
We don't have to forget to make this announcement from Barcelona Technology School. I believe they are gonna they are gonna share with you a very brief survey. If you could answer it, I think they will be very insightful for them.
Yeah, thanks, Miriam, because I just forgot it. So thanks again to participate in this webinar. Also, thanks Barcelona Technology School for inviting me. And well, I mean, we are in touch. I hope you enjoyed. And if there is anything else, just as Miriam said before, just feel free to contact us.
Reach out.
Yeah, and let's see. Okay, thank you, Miriam.
Thank you so much, and have you all a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.